Welcome to the Success Ascent. This is Pat Mancuso, and today we have part 2 of our interview with Dr. Randy Ross, author of 3 books, including his most recent, Hope Rises. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to share this with you. This session was the most powerful session I believe we've had on the Success Ascent podcast for mindset and what we're dealing with in our lives every day today, both business and personally. I want to share one part with you to encourage you to listen to this entire episode. Hope is not wishful thinking. It's not burying our heads in the sands. It's not passive. You've heard the saying, hope is not a strategy. And Randy displays that myth because, as you will hear, hope is the absolute best strategy to help us get beyond what we experience in our lives every day. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us today, and on to the ascent, the Success Ascent.
But it's a question that we're afraid to ask because it strips away the veneer. It causes us to be vulnerable. It's very risky. Sometimes it's painful to hear what other people have to say about that. But it's absolutely essential because until those blind spots are exposed and we're willing to do the deep work of delving in and working on those to close those gaps, we will never reach our full potential. And so the self-help conundrum is this idea that no matter how much material is on the market,
right,
for development and personal growth, we're never going to achieve it if we don't know where to start.
So let me ask you a question on that, because the thought just popped into my head, and I want to see if I connect the dot the same way you might. Would you ask that of everybody who knows you, or would you ask that of the group that you really know and respect and have that high level relationship with? I'm just curious how you'd respond to that.
Yeah. So I would ask both, but here's how I would do it, with the caveat that the people who are going to offer the best and most profound feedback are the ones that know you closely. And so if you want to talk about defining a healthy relationship, as we do in Relationomics, it's 3 things. And it's also the same definition, by the way, of a healthy culture. But a healthy relationship is a relationship in which 2 people, A, believe the best in one another. B, they want the best for one another. And C, they expect the best from one another. Now, not every relationship has that kind of depth or has that trilogy of an effective relationship, believing the best in, wanting the best for, and expecting the best from. Those are your closest relationships where you need to dive deep and ask that question, what's it like to be on the other side of me? Because from those conversations, you'll be able to glean a lot of developmental fodder. But it's also a great question to ask of let's just say, a client that you've not worked with for very long. What's it like to work with me? How can I improve my service? Because what you're essentially asking is for their feedback. How can I be better in serving you?
Yeah.
And so I would not put as much weight in those initial superficial conversations, but even then you can glean immense valuable feedback. I'll never forget, I was leading a workshop and trying to demonstrate this, asked a lady to play this out with me in a workshop, and we'd only known each other for 2 hours. And I said, just for the sake of everybody here, share with me something that you think would be valuable feedback just based upon first impressions or your observations in our interactions so far. And Pat, she gave me 2 things I still carry with me to this day.
Yeah.
She looked at me, she said, well, Randy, she said, you're 6'4", and you're a massive guy with piercing blue eyes. And she said, when we first met, I'm 5'2". You hovered over me, and your presence was large, and it was a bit intimidating. Mm-hmm. She said, when you first encountered me, because I'm a hugger. I mean, I come from Texas. I come from a hugging family. I lived in South Florida. In Latin culture, you hug everybody. And she said, you were too much in my bubble. You were too much in my space. And when you first meet people, you might want to back away so it's not so threatening. I have always remembered that, to be careful of physical closeness, because for some people, with my size, it's a little intimidating. The second thing she said is, when you speak, your eye contact is so good, But if you linger too long, I feel like you're staring a hole through me. And I use that when I speak now in workshops and from the platform. I like to have eye contact, but I don't do it for too long because I know that's going to make some people feel uncomfortable and it's a bit unnerving. So even first impressions, you can ask that question and walk away with some valuable feedback.
Well, there's a restaurant in Austin that you might be familiar with, Trulux. One of my favorite restaurants. And, you talked about the hospitality industry, and it always amazes me because we're kind of a family of foodies, and my son is a sous chef. So that's a deal for us. And
Yeah.
I'll never forget, we were down there recently before pre-COVID and ate there with a business associate. And the next morning, we're in a session and my phone rings, and it's an Austin number, and I'm in Austin. And here it was, the manager of the restaurant reaching out, wanting to know how the service was. And I thought, that's the first time in my entire life that a restaurant's reached out after the fact on my phone to find out how the service was. And so, it's just those little differences that make such a huge deal, and it can be so impactful. Now, how many times do you think I've told that story?
Well, and by him getting feedback, if there was anything that they can change just by being open to that feedback,
Right.
maybe it's something small.
Right.
It lets you know that they are responsive to your need. And at the same time, it's very valuable information.
No, absolutely. And they do the right now, the restaurant industry is being decimated with everything that's going on. And the people who keep going to those restaurants are that's their lifeblood right now. So it's such a big deal. You made a comment in the book. I love this. It says, sometimes people prefer a problem they can't solve to a solution they don't like. And I thought about that. I went, that's right. And you talk about this concept of raw conversations. And so talk to us about that, because everybody has the best of intentions. I think people understand maybe how to get there. They're just really uncomfortable with that conversation. You broke it down in that raw conversation. So talk to us a bit about that.
Well, raw conversations is our way of talking about healthy developmental conversations. There are 4 kinds of coaching conversations. The first one is what I call a complimentary conversation. And that's if you go back to Ken Blanchard, and I was so grateful that Ken wrote the foreword to Relationomics, but you remember the 1-minute manager, you walk around, you catch people doing things right.
Right.
Because, whatever you identify and you focus on, you're going to get more of. So if you focus on affirmation, building people up, you're going to get more of that. So complimentary is the first. The second kind of conversation, which is absolutely critical, is a curious conversation. Now, curious conversation is when you don't have all the information, you don't know all the details, but you just sense or you suspect. And so I come to you and say, hey, Pat, I'm just curious. I want to get your take on this. How do you feel like the project's going with XYZ? Give me your take. I'm just curious because I want to hear what you're thinking, what you're seeing, see it through your eyes, and I need more information, so I'm trying to gather that. But then you move beyond a curious conversation to a corrective conversation. And a corrective conversation is when you say, hey, things need to change. If we extrapolate this out, it's problematic. So let's talk about that corrective conversation. And then the last is the coaching conversation is confrontational, where you need to dive in, or carefrontational, if you want to use that word.
Right.
You dive in, it's the deep, hard stuff. It's the toe-to-toe, it's the eyeball to eyeball. It's this is imperative, this needs to change. And that's the raw conversation. And raw, some people call it a fierce conversation. Some people might call it a necessary conversation. We call it raw because it has 3 components. You're dealing in reality. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. Because I love this statement by Edwin Friedman. He says, the person who can most accurately describe reality without casting blame will emerge as the leader, whether designated or not.
Wow.
So leadership has to be about calling out reality. So a raw conversation deals with reality. The second thing is it always advances the relationship and the issue. Raw conversations are not, beating a dead horse or spending too much time dissecting the cadaver. Although sometimes you've got to go back and you've got to see, what led to this, but it's not a matter of looking to the past. It's about improving the future. So it's about advancing relationships and also advancing the issues. And the last thing is wrestling to resolution. And this is the piece that so many people leave out because they think that once they've, said their piece or, deliberated on their position that everything's fine. Well, that's not it. You have to stay in the fray. You got to stay in the ring until you wrestle the problem to the mat and it taps out. And then you have to come up with creative solutions. So wrestling to resolution, and resolution is so imperative. And resolution means that you also come back and you follow up and you check in, you make sure things are still on track and that you're still on the road to solutions. But those raw conversations are all based upon, there's a premise for that. It's all based upon what I call 7 qualities that are absolutely necessary for personal growth and development. And I won't dive into all of those right now, but the first one is, and these are great because not only are they important for us as we're trying to grow, to be reflective on those areas where we need to, close gaps in our character, communicate more effectively, connect with other people more deeply, whatever the case may be. But the first of the 7 qualities for us for personal growth, and also as we're looking to build teams or partnerships, is just the question is, do they receive feedback well? Am I willing not only to receive feedback, but am I willing to pursue feedback? And I can't tell you the number of leaders I talk with all the time. And I say, how many of you are responsible for giving feedback to your direct reports? Of course, everybody is. Every hand in the room goes up. I said, okay, when's the last time you asked one of your direct reports, face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, to give you feedback on how you were performing in terms of helping to facilitate their success? And it's amazing. Less than 20% of the hands go up. And I'm saying, how can you be a good leader if you're not getting feedback from your people or from your partners on how you're doing to help ensure their success? Because the fastest way to be successful is to ensure the success of everyone around you.
Absolutely.
And if you're not facilitating their success, there's no way that you yourself are going to become successful. So, being open to and aggressively seeking feedback through good, healthy coaching conversations is the first of those 7 qualities that are necessary for someone to grow.
Well, and you said not only getting the feedback, however, then taking action on the feedback.
That's right.
My guess is the 20% hands that went up, then you'd ask, so how many of you actually pursued that feedback? The number would probably be less.
That's right.
Yeah. So Randy, let's shift gears a little bit, because you've got a project which sounds pretty exciting. And it's one, when you started talking about it, you were just lighting up. I mean, you light up all the time when you're talking about, it's just fun to watch you. And of course, folks are listening. So talk about that project.
The book's titled Hope Rises.
Hope Rises. There you go.
Hope Rises. And the subtitle is Make Your Life, Love, and Leadership Soar. And you're right, Pat. I do light up because I think it's a message for our times. It came about because when the whole pandemic broke out, one of my agents challenged me. He said, we don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know how deep this trench is, but I think the world needs to hear a solid message on hope. And I thought about that, and I started thinking about it from several perspectives. And most of what I had read on the subject of hope came from a very strong faith orientation. And well, it should, because as we know in the Torah, in the New Testament, in faith, hope, and love, in ancient wisdom literature, faith, hope, and love are intricately intertwined together. But I wanted to come at it from a slightly different perspective, because what I wanted to do was I wanted to find out, okay, what research is available from a scientific standpoint on the efficacy of hope. What difference does hope make? And so what I did was I poured over the last 2 decades of scientific research on hope, and I was astounded, wading through over about 200 studies on hope. And what I came out with a very clear understanding was simply this, that high hope individuals perform at a higher level, experience greater health and well-being. They live longer. They're more productive. They have healthier relationships. They are less prone to absenteeism. Their marriages are healthier. I mean, all across the board in almost every area of life. And so here's the question, but how do you define hope?
Well, that's where I was going. I was like, okay, I'm ready. Tell me.
Yeah. And so that's the part for me that was really fun, was sort of to reverse engineer hope, to take this concept of hope, to break it down into all of its various components, and then rebuild it and put it back together again in layman's language where everybody can understand it, they can grasp it, and they can apply it to their lives. Because I don't have to tell you that what we're going through right now, you've got the physical threat of the pandemic and its worldwide repercussions. But now on the heels of that, we've got the economic challenges, or the economic collapse, with unemployment being at an all-time high, right, and people being in transition, and even if they are in business, having to pivot those businesses to do business in a different way. And then on top of that, we've got the social unrest that we see all around us because of inequity and injustice and lack of equality, and the racial tension that has now come to the forefront. But we also have the relational tension in corporate settings, because people are having to work remote. They don't see each other. Relationships are being strained internally and externally with the client base. And we're seeing challenges at home because of being, cloistered and sequestered in stay-at-home type environments where spouses are having a challenging time communicating with one another. And I'm talking to my counselor friends, and relational issues are crumbling, and people are seeking counsel, and they're applying for divorces, and you have child abuse because you've got parents at home that are stressed out, who don't know how to deal with taking care of their children's education. So you've got abuse taking place there. The gathering storm cloud on the horizon is this idea of how do we keep ourselves and our colleagues and our friends and family members emotionally healthy, because the dark storm clouds that are gathering have to do with emotional health and well-being, fear, uncertainty, anxiety, depression. We're being bombarded with those. And the only way to build a protective bunker against that is to understand what hope is. And hope is not just wishful thinking. It's not denial, sticking your head in the sand and hoping that this storm will pass. It's not a Pollyanna attitude where you see, life as being bright and, rosy and deny the reality of the situation. It's not a matter of just the glass being half full or wearing rosy colored glasses. Right. Hope is certainly not passive. It's not an abdication and throwing your hands up and going, there's nothing I can do. I mean, hope, literally, maybe you've heard this. Have you ever heard the phrase, hope is not a strategy?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the whole book debunks that, because hope is the absolute best strategy. If there is no hope, no strategy that you concoct will ever be successful, because hope is the emotional substance. Or here's a good definition of hope. Hope is a dynamic motivational strategy based upon inspirational goal setting. Now, we can take that and break that down for a long time, but the point is, hope is very active. It's very alive. They're fundamental foundational beliefs. But high hope individuals just live life better. They're happier. They have better relationships. They're more productive, because hope is a resilience factor that mitigates all the risk factors of hopelessness. And I even take a deep dive early in the book talking about how hope is a mitigating factor against depression and suicidality. Depression, just simply defined, is the absence of hope.
Hope, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And so if you can effectively increase your hope, and it's available to any and everybody, If you can effectively increase your hope, if you can embrace the challenges that come your way, then no longer are you a victim of circumstances, but you actually take charge and you begin to define your circumstances. And that's what we unpack in the book.
So what would you say to somebody right now who feels like they have high hope, and yet because of the environment that they're in, be it a corporate environment or a household environment or a sibling relationship, how would you coach them to coach the other person? And I know that it's kind of a broad question, yet because we're in such close, in fact, I was on a call this morning with somebody in our business, and the topic came up that one of the partners, one of the spouses was seeking counseling because they felt like they weren't on the same page with where we were at and where we were going. So what would you simply say to somebody like that? How would you coach them?
Yeah, great question. And the first thing I think that's important to understand is that hope and hopelessness are not on a single continuum. In other words, you can be a person of high hope and still at times also struggle with high hopelessness. Does that make sense?
Interesting.
And so it's better to see hope and hopelessness really on a graph, with hope being the x-axis and hopelessness being the y-axis. And what you want to do is that all of us, if we're honest, we struggle at times with hopelessness as we look at certain situations. And we talk a lot about this in the book because we all encounter obstacles that block the path to a desired destination. Okay?
Right.
So what do we do in those times? Well, we have to look for alternate pathways, either alternate ways to get around the obstacle or alternate pathways to take. And so how we view hope and hopelessness and the balance between the two is, first of all, critically important because it's not a single continuum.
Right.
So what you want to do is you want to continue to elevate your level of hope, even if you're struggling with hopelessness. And we want to provide that for other people as well, because during these periods of time, leadership, there's just such a void right now. In good, and I'm talking about at every level. I'm talking about in our homes, in our communities, in society in general, in politics. There's just a void of leadership, and we can provide hope for others by showing them the way, by first of all, us understanding and embracing what hope actually is and how it can be elevated. And we talk about critical things that you can do to elevate your hope. But then also people who have high hope can be a light in the darkness for other people to show them the way to hope, because it's available to everyone. And that's the thing. It's not some magic formula. It's not a 7-step principle. There's work to be done, but everybody can have hope. And so to lead people by understanding these principles into the pathway of hope at this time is absolutely critical.
So I know you and both of us have a background in behavioral assessment and how people, are built and they function. And do you think there's any component of that right now that, is it different for different behavioral styles?
Yes and no. So, people who tend to be a bit more extroverted, who more fluidly engage in deeper relationships or in relationships, tend to possess a higher level of optimism. And optimism, while it's not complete, it's the foundation of hope.
Right.
But it forms the foundation upon which the skyscraper of hope is built that rises toward the heavens, if that makes sense.
It does.
Because positivity and optimism is simply not enough. It's not enough. And so in the book, I delve into some very, I just call them sobering life situations where you can't put a positive spin on it, no matter how you want to do that. As a matter of fact, I spent a great deal of time referring to an individual by the name of Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl was an Austrian neuroscientist, and he was a psychiatrist who was taken prisoner in a Nazi concentration camp for 4 years. And there he was conscripted to record some of the most hideous atrocities that man has ever perpetrated against his own kind. Everything he possessed was taken away. Every family member was killed in the extermination camps of Nazi Germany. But he endured, and he came out to write a book called Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, he talks about the fact that sometimes life circumstances are so depraved. Sometimes life circumstances are so irreversible that the only thing you can do is take control of your own soul, your own spirit, your own attitude. He called it tragic optimism. And it was this idea that even when you can't control anything in the environment around you, that you can control your own attitude and how you respond to that environment. And I think it's critical for us to understand that. Sometimes we feel helpless, and our helplessness makes us feel hopeless, but we aren't helpless because it's not ships are not sunk by the water around them. Ships are sunk by the water that gets in them.
Right.
And as long as we maintain control of our own spirit, as long as we are the captains of our own soul, and the only way to do that is to realize that hope floats. Hope is the essence of what everyone needs to sustain themselves during difficult periods of time. And if we embrace that and we can impart that, then life's challenges don't define who we are, but we use those challenges to define life.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
So my aha from this conversation is I can have hopelessness and have hope at the same time.
You can. And so the point is that we all struggle with hopelessness.
Right.
But here are 4 common beliefs, and maybe this is a good way to sort of wrap it up. People who have high hope, here are the 4 beliefs that they possess. The first one is just simply this idea that my tomorrow can be brighter than today. No matter how bleak, no matter how dark, no matter how challenging circumstances may be,
right.
I believe that tomorrow can be brighter than today. That's the first common belief that high hope people have. The second one is this: I have a say in how my life unfolds. I can't control everything, you know. The serenity prayer, God, give me the serenity to know those things that I can change, to understand those things that I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference, the peace to embrace those things that I can't. So what we need to focus on are those things that we can control. And I have a say. Maybe I can't control all the environment, but I can control me.
Right.
And I will not let the oppressive circumstances of life overwhelm me at the core of who I am, which comes down to our core values. That's the second thing. I have a say in how my life unfolds. The third thing is when I encounter obstacles, there are multiple paths to get to a desired destination. So a lot of times we're learning in life and in business and even in relationships, we've got to pivot. We've got to do something different. But here's the transformational question when we face challenges. And this is great. What does this now make possible?
So that's theory of abundance versus scarcity. Again,
it gets back to, it takes your eyes off of the problem and it turns it to the possibilities. Okay, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't. But creativity is what takes place when all your other options are taken off the table. So now that those options are taken off the table, what does this now make possible? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. So there are multiple paths to any desired destination. Now, sometimes that pathway is blocked and you have to re-goal. You have to shift and make another goal, another inspirational goal. And I talk about that in the book. But the idea that there's not just one way to get there. We can find multiple paths. And the fourth one is the principle of reality, which just simply says, I know right up front, I will encounter obstacles. That life throws its challenges, that I will have to face some brushback pitches in life, where life circumstances, throws the ball at your head and you've got to step out of the batter's box if you don't want to get struck. And then you got to shake yourself off and step back up. I will encounter obstacles. It's naivete to think that life won't be hard,
Right.
because it will be. But those four things can drive us and help us have a better understanding of how we need to redefine life's realities.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm ready to buy the book today and get reading. So I mean, seriously, oh my gosh, it just sounds amazing. And the research that you did, I just can't look forward to having it soon enough. So Randy, let me shift gears as we kind of close, come to the end here. What's the best advice you were ever given by a mentor, by a coach, by a consultant?
Oh, wow. So many things. There are a few that sort of pop to the forefront. And one is the one that we just talked about when it comes to the 7 qualities of a growing individual. Mentor of mine said, the best thing you can do is seek continuous feedback.
Yeah.
In sports, that's necessary. That's why we have coaches. In school, that's necessary. That's why we have teachers and tutors. In life, that's necessary. We need mentors. In business and in relationships, we need mentors. We need to connect ourselves with other people who can continuously give us feedback for our personal growth and development. That's the first thing. The second thing I think is also important, and this has to do with marriage, but it has to do with any relationship. Right before I got married, a friend of mine said, a great marriage is a gift that you build together for yourself. And I think that, when we encounter challenges, and a lot of people are encountering challenges right now, challenges are an opportunity to refine our character. If we will let difficult times do its work and refine our character, we talk a lot about that in the book, because in challenging times, here's the question we all want to ask: why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to us? That's not the question. That's the wrong question, because no one will ever be able to provide a satisfactory answer to the question of why. But the question we should ask is, what does this now make possible? What will I do with these circumstances? How can I leverage them to improve who I am? And the best thing we can do during times like this is do the deep work of introspection, self-reflection, to bring a better self to the table. So those are a couple of things that I think have sort of encouraged me and challenged me to see things a little bit differently. But here's the way my mentor put it. He said, Randy, don't ever waste a crisis. There's something good that will come out of every challenging experience you have in life. Don't ever waste a crisis.
What a great learning opportunity. What great advice. So I always ask my guests, other than Remarkable and Relationomics and your new book coming, what book are you reading right now that you might recommend to somebody?
Oh, I have done a lot of reading recently about this whole area of hope. And so a lot of books by Rick Snyder, I would throw into that mix when it comes to hope. I love to read. I read a lot of theology. I read a lot of self-improvement type of books as well. And there are a number of those. I read a lot of devotions. Wisdom Hunters is one by Boyd Bailey that I thoroughly enjoy. I love anything by Ken Blanchard. Ken is one of my heroes. And so Ken is, I think at this point, he's sold 60 million copies, of his books. But all of his books are great when it comes to self-improvement and self-help. Some other authors that I just really greatly appreciate are guys like Malcolm Gladwell, who approach very simple life experiences from a research-based perspective and then makes it available on a very common sense level to everyone. He's a great author, and another one is Henry Cloud. Just about everything that Henry Cloud has put out. Henry is a psychologist who's written a lot of books. Probably his best one that everyone knows is Boundaries, which is a great book as well. Okay. Those are just a few authors that I enjoy following.
Well, I love that. So many notes. And so I just want to thank you just from the bottom of my heart. And I'm so grateful we had the opportunity to meet. I want to share gratitude with my friend John Prescott, who introduced us, because without that introduction, you certainly would have been here today, and we wouldn't have had this opportunity to impact folks. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. I truly appreciate it. Remember, go to where you subscribe to podcasts, The Success Ascent, or you can go to thesuccessascent.com.
If you've not yet subscribed, please go to your favorite podcast source and subscribe to The Success Ascent, or simply go to www.thesuccessascent, and that's ASCENT.com, thesuccessascent.com. Thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to catching you on the next ascent.